Today on Breaking Bullying, we are meeting a woman who did something that most people would never do. She tracked down her middle school bullies. We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is licensed clinical social worker and writer Simone Ellin. Simone, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
So, before we get into this topic of why you tracked down your bullies, tell me what happened in middle school? What were they doing to you?
So it actually probably won't sound that traumatic, but it was for me. I had made this new group of friends and they were like the kind of the cool girls at school, one of two cool girl groups. And I was so happy and I loved my new friends and I loved being part of the group. And one day I got to the lunchroom to our lunch table where we sat. This was seventh grade. I sat down, I got there late, they were all already there talking, and, I started to contribute to the conversation, but I realized after, I don't know, a minute or so that nobody was responding to anything I was saying. They were just completely ignoring me, and I kind of looked around trying to figure out what was going on, and I realized that they were not responding to me and acting like I just wasn't even there, and then they all got up and left me sitting at the table, and I was absolutely heartbroken, and I tried unsuccessfully for at least a few weeks to talk to them and figure out what was going on, call the one who was my best friend in the group, and nobody spoke to me, and nobody spoke to me for pretty much the rest of middle school and high school because I was in the same school with these girls all that time. And it wasn't the only bullying that I experienced, but it was the bullying that made me the most traumatized, I would say. I just never really got over it. And the whole experience just made me feel like I was not as good as other people and really uncool and unworthy and comparing myself to others all the time. Um, and I had other insecurities in my friendships and relationships from that point on. And in spite of having therapy and having other friendships and having a family and all of that stuff, it just stayed with me, never went away. And I would continue to see some of these people off and on throughout my life because we all lived in the same town and outside of New York City. And so, periodically I would see them at reunions and other things. And I just continued to feel very uncomfortable whenever I was around them.
So, your bullying pretty much was being ignored,
Yeah,
kind
relational
of,
bullying, right?
yeah,
Excluded,
which a lot of
excluded.
people don't really view. I mean, a lot of people probably won't see it as bullying, but
Yes.
until you're the one that's being excluded, it's
Yeah.
kind of like being that kid. It's kind of like being the kid in gym class where they have to pick teams and you're always the last kid being
I
picked.
was I was that kid too.
Same
Uh,
here.
yeah. So, and in fact, I did not recognize that as bullying until I started to do research about it and I discovered that relational bullying, which is what I experienced and which is more common in girls, is just as damaging as physical bullying and verbal bullying.
And especially when you don't know the why behind why you're being picked on.
Right.
So with that experience, you had some, I guess, like you had some trust issues
Yep.
as well, getting new friends. Did high school get better though for you towards the end?
Yeah, so I mean, what happened was maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 months later, I did join another group of girls who were my friends, like, throughout high school, and that certainly made a difference for me, but it wasn't enough to kind of erase what had happened earlier. I guess particularly because I was seeing these other girls, all the time at school, and so it just no matter what happened in my life, no matter how many friends I had later, no matter having kids, getting married, having other relationships, having a career that was successful. Nothing could take this away until I decided to reach out to them.
Okay. Just a quick question before we get to that part of it. Were you friends with these girls before they started ignoring you, or friends with part of them?
So I was friends with them before, but not for a very long time.
Okay.
There was something about being part of this cool group that just made me so happy because I'd always been kind of an insecure kid, and it wasn't like I was so confident and had such high self-esteem before they became my friends.
Okay.
So once I got into this group, I was like, this is the greatest. And I really did like the people. They were really smart and interesting and fun. And I felt like we really clicked until this one day.
Okay. In which, well, at that time you didn't know why. So fast forwarding from middle school until when did you decide to track them down?
So it didn't happen till I was in my fees, actually.
Wow.
And I actually had a situation at work that triggered this. I had a colleague at work who kind of replicated the situation. So I had a new colleague who started, and she was really fun, and I felt like we clicked. We were having a great time at work. We were laughing all the time. And then all of a sudden, she stopped talking to me also. And she started to be really kind of abusive to me, verbally abusive and excluding me. She'd go out to coffee with other people and not invite me and was very critical of everything that I did at work. And I wasn't really sure what happened, but I remember talking to my boss about it because he was aware of what was going on. And I said to him, it feels like I'm in middle school again. And that was when I kind of realized that, oh, this is like triggering these old feelings that never really went away, but they were sort of in the background and then they became like very acute. And I was sitting at my desk one day and I thought, what if I contacted these people and tried to find out like what was going on, why they did this and how they how do they feel about it now? Do they even remember? And so I started reaching out to them.
So how many did you contact?
So I actually broadened the whole project so that it wasn't only those girls that I spoke to, but I ended up speaking to about 45 women in my class. And
Wow.
there were girls who were my friends, there were girls who were acquaintances, there were girls from like the hippie crowd and the jock crowd and the cheerleaders and the brains, like all different, how you have all those cliques in middle school and high school. So I spoke to 45 women, including the like 6 or 7 girls that were at the lunchroom that day.
Okay.
Um, and I heard all about their perspectives of what the social scene was like for them. Um, and I learned a tremendous amount from that.
Out of 45, how many responded back to you?
That was how many responded back to me. The the actual class was bigger than that. I think boys and girls was like 175.
Okay.
So if you say like half of those were women, it was a decent percentage, but not everybody was willing to talk.
Okay, but you had 45 though, women.
That did speak to me, yes.
Okay. What what were some of the responses of why you were being ignored?
So the first person that I spoke to was the person who was my best friend in that group. And she was actually someone I had seen over the years and actually was a colleague of mine for a while even. And we had actually even gotten together a couple of times as adults. And it was always the same dynamic when we were together. We would laugh, we would have a great time. And then she would kind of not want to do it again. Like it was a very strange dynamic. But anyway, I think she was very honest though. She told me that she could sense my insecurity and my anxiety. And she said, when you're a 12-year-old girl, you don't want to be anywhere near that. It's like contagious. and it rubs off on you. And she was very interested in social status. She had recently lost another friend who went to the other cool girls group, and she was feeling rejected when she became friends with me, and I think she started to feel like I was bringing down her social status. She apologized, which was very felt very good, but I had the sense that she hadn't really changed that much. Some of the other girls in the group that I spoke to who also apologized were different in the sense that they really, um they really had a lot of remorse, and they also remembered having done the same thing to another girl in the group who had been friends with them for much longer. One woman shared with me that she had so much guilt about icing out the other friend that she had never recovered from it her whole life. She'd always
Wow.
felt like it was something terrible that she had done, and she eventually asked me if I thought she should apologize to that woman. And I said, "Well, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that the apologies that I've received have really brought me a lot of comfort." And she ended up apologizing to the other woman, and they both reached out and said how happy they were that that had happened and how grateful they were that I had brought this to the surface. So that was one thing that happened. Other people just talked about the general meanness that they experienced, even though they were still part of the group. They just felt like everybody around them was so mean, and there was so much bullying going on, and they just didn't know how to handle it. They just had no apparatus to intervene or to say no. Another woman that I interviewed who was a teacher told me that she shared the experience of what happened that day with her students and her own children, as like an example of what not to do because she felt so badly about being involved.
Did you get any responses like, "Why you bring this back up now?"
I didn't get that from the women that I spoke to, but I did get that from some people who read the article. Some people were like, "You're a crazy stalker. Why would you do this?" "Who still thinks about what happened to them in middle school? Like, what a loser," that kind of thing. But the vast majority of people that responded to my article, and there was at least 1.3 million responses, and it's been republished many times. Most of the people were grateful, were identifying, were wanting to share their own stories. It's a very common story. I mean, especially with
Mhm.
girls. So it resonated with a lot of people. And I think many of them felt like, why am I making such a big deal out of this? Everybody goes through this. It's not a big deal. But for some of us, it really is a big deal. And it
People and
really has an impact.
people ended their lives because of it.
That's right.
It's a pretty big deal, and the people who will give you that feedback of why I'm bringing this up because
Right.
you're trying to help other people, you know? You're trying
Right.
to figure out why you are isolated,
Yeah.
and if it's
Yeah.
been obviously affected you this much that it triggered you in your 50s from when it happened again. Going back to that coworker that made this all kinda come to light, did you ever confront her?
No, I didn't. Well, I mean, that's not true. No, I mean, I did. I did try to talk to her about it.
Okay.
I was like, "Why, what happened? Why are you treating me this way? I feel like we should be friends. We have so much in common. What's going on?" And her response was something like, "We're not friends. We're colleagues." And she had no interest in really discussing why her feelings toward me had changed so dramatically.
It's probably nothing that you did, it's probably something that's going on in her life. I
I
mean,
think so. Yeah.
it's that's usually when people like, when I encounter those people, it's something that I've done. It's they have bigger problems in their life than I got, so it's like, it is what it is.
Right,
Um,
it is.
if they wanna be left alone, let them be. Don't force anything.
Yeah. I had to sit next to her at work, and I considered changing my seat. Eventually, she quit, which was really a blessing.
Going back to being sounded like you got one good reason why you're ignored. And going back to that was because you're insecure. And I think you said this earlier, that was true though. You were kind of insecure in middle
Yeah, that
school?
was true. I think she was picking up on something that was really there. I also had this view that I should be able to tell my friends anything, and
Correct, you should.
I could even tell them, "Oh, I'm feeling insecure." I thought, like, my mother was a therapist. I grew up in a household where everybody was talking about their feelings all the time. So, I would share my feelings really openly with my friends, and I think that that's not such a wise thing to do when you're 12 years old. Like, it backfired.
Well, if it's I mean, at that time you didn't know, but if they're your true friends, obviously that person cared more about social status than a friendship.
Yes, yes.
So that's unfair, but that's on her, not you. And like you said, it sounded like she didn't really change anyway. So, I mean, I can't imagine what her life is like today. Always chasing that social status. It's got to be exhausting, you know? I don't know. But a true friend would have picked up on it and probably would could have just said, "Hey, maybe stop doing this or stop doing that." Or when I think of insecure kids, I think of like needy kids, like always wanting something or attention or forcing themselves into the conversation when they should just kind of relax and wait for the right time. I mean, that's my thoughts. I don't know if that's correct. Just a quick personal question: were you one of those kids with that insecurity? Sometimes those kids can be kind of like that negative kid as well, where you say, "Hey, how's it going?" They're like, "Oh, I don't know," or they always they're kind of like that Debbie Downer. Was that ever you in middle school, or because
I
I'm just trying
mean,
to figure out where the insecurity part came from? Like, how did the kids pick that up?
I think it came from, I think it came probably from my parents. My parents were very positive when it came to me and my sister. They loved us. They made that clear. They weren't critical. They kind of thought we were the greatest. But the problem was that they didn't think that they were the greatest. They were always putting themselves down. And I think that living around that, you just kind of absorb that. If your
Yeah.
parents don't feel good about themselves, you're not going to feel good about yourself. The other thing that was always in the background was that my mother is a Holocaust survivor. And so she had a lot of trauma related to that and always felt that she didn't fit in and always felt that she was going to be rejected and just kind of felt like a weirdo, when she came to this country. And I think that, being her daughter, I picked up on that too. And I always felt that way about myself, even though I didn't have that experience myself.
Okay. So maybe that's kind of where she maybe kind of picked up. Maybe at the time you probably didn't really probably realize it, but maybe the other kids kind of saw that and picked up on it.
I think so.
Because I
Yeah.
know as an adult, I mean, I'm I am kind of the same way. If there's like in my own family, too, but if there's someone that's always negative all the time, it brings me down all the time. Like
Yes.
there's certain people I can't talk to, especially like if I go do interview for somebody for something else about what I do. I have to change everything around me. I can't be around negative people. I can't be around this. I even have to change the music that I'm listening to in order to be in the right mood because that negativity is so strong. It would just it takes the excitement
Yeah.
out of you, and it, it's weird how people can affect your mood, even
Yeah.
though they don't really do it on purpose. It's just
I can totally relate to that in terms of my mother. She's so negative. It's and she has reason to be given her background, but
oh, of course, yeah,
it's really hard to hear, and it's really hard for to hear her put herself down because it makes me angry because I realize that I do the same thing, and it's because I heard her do that.
yeah. But
So,
this is where we can do better as a society is when we teach our kids, hey, if you see a kid talking like this, you need to ask them what's going on, see if they're okay.
right.
If you would have known, you would have changed. Sometimes you don't know until someone
Yeah.
tells you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it stinks. So, when you did this whole project, you got quite the attention for it. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Um, so after I did the project, and like I said, I interviewed other people besides the bullies, and I learned some amazing things about my classmates. A lot of them had terrible things going on at home that I didn't know about. One of them was being abused, and she took it out on me. And that was a separate bullying event, but she ended up telling me that that was why she was bullying me because of abuse that she was having at home. I learned from another person who was supposedly one of the popular kids that, she felt terrible about herself. The girls in her group were so mean to her. Another woman said, I didn't have a woman friend for till I was 43 because the girls in my clique were so mean to me that I didn't trust any other women. So I learned all of these things. And I wrote this article that was in HuffPost about the whole project. And I was shocked because it went viral. In the first like couple of days, I had like 1.6 million views, and I
Wow.
was receiving emails and messages and texts from all these people all over the world. And not only women, it was men, it was people of all ages, and was really
What was those
shocking.
messages like? What was the emails or text about? Like, what was like majority saying?
Actually, I was wrong. It wasn't text. It was emails, it was LinkedIn
Okay.
messages, it was Facebook messages, and it was comments on the article website. Most of them were people saying, "Thank you so much for sharing your story. I was also bullied, and I also haven't ever gotten over it." And some of them would actually talk about what happened to them. People were really into it. I was like amazed. And then HuffPost reposts it, like, all the time. Other sites repost
Yeah.
it all the time. They did a TikTok video of me. It was, like, overwhelming, and I felt really good. I felt like, "Wow, I hit a nerve. I'm actually doing something that's really helping people." So I started writing a book, and I did a lot of research about bullying, and I learned, you know, much more about it. I learned about, bullying prevention programs and how they're not working that well. I learned about all of the long-term effects, and I also learned that there are ways of helping people that I did not know about when I first started. Even though I had had psychotherapy, I didn't know about some of the therapeutic techniques that are particularly helpful for adult survivors of bullying.
Yeah.
I also learned that some people really believe that bullying is a trauma. It's not just, a rite of passage or a bad thing that happens to you that just get over as you grow up. Um, I learned, as you're saying, that some people take their own lives. I learned that bullying right now is much worse than it was when I was a kid because of cyberbullying and because 24 hours a day, the kids can't get away from it. And what else? Yeah, I mean, so when the first article first came out, I was on a bunch of podcasts. I was on radio shows. I was invited to be on a TV show, the Tamara Hall show, but they wanted me to have one of my bullies on with me, and
Ooh,
nobody
that might
would
be kinda tough.
nobody would
Yeah, who in the
agree to
right
do
mind
that.
would do
Right,
that?
right.
I mean, I
And
tried
tho
to get one of my bullies to come on my podcast, and they just ignored me, and one of my friends were like, "You did not ask him that." I'm like, "Well, it'll be a good episode, I wanna know."
Yeah, yeah,
I see the point. You think, like 30 some years later, it's like, "Hey, what was up? What's up?" But, uh,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's kinda tough. Going you made an interesting comment about the bully prevention programs. A lot of them don't work. And you're not the only guest that says that. I had another guest, Barbara Coloroso, who's an anti-bullying expert. She was
mhm.
back in the '80s, she was on Oprah Winfrey. She was
Oh,
Oprah's anti-bullying expert, and I learned so much from her.
well, that's interesting. I
And
should look
and
her up.
she kinda said the same thing. She's been a guest on my podcast twice, way back in the beginning. But what are your takes on the bully prevention programs? Why some of them might not be effective?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did a lot of research on the Always program.
The one that
Jan
schools use. Yeah.
Alves, yeah. Um, and it seemed to be a lot more helpful to people in other countries. Um, in the US, it's the statistics are something like it generally reduces bullying to about 18%, by about 18%, excuse me. And, that's good, but it's not good enough by any means.
Yeah.
And then there are also social emotional learning programs.
Yeah.
And those usually contain segments on bullying prevention. And again, the statistics are okay, they're not great. And then there are a lot of bullying programs that talk about the importance of bystanders and that bystanders, when someone stands up and says no to
It's called the
bullying,
upstanders. The
yeah,
upstanders. Yeah.
excuse me, yeah, it makes a big difference. But the problem is that hardly any kids are willing to do that because it's so risky. They risk having the bullies turn on them and their own social standing can be affected negatively. And they're just afraid.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, like with the school, like with the oldest stuff. So when I ran for school board over a year ago, I learned a lot about those programs. And on paper, it should work, but the problem is that the schools weren't going to force it anyways. So it can't work if the schools don't want to force
Yeah,
something.
that's
So
the other
it's
thing.
like, well, we have it, but we're not really using it. It's kind of like having a gym membership. If you go every
Then you
day,
don't
you'll get in
go.
better shape.
Right.
Yeah, big deal that you have the gym membership, but if you don't go, nothing's going to change.
That is true, and also, I guess I found out that everybody in the school community, like, everybody from, like, the custodian to the principal, have to be completely on board with it for it to work, and like you're saying, that's not
And the
usually the
problem is,
case.
and with these days, the teachers got their own problems.
Yes.
Everyone's got their own problems, and it seems like they just can't help. And really, when a kid gets bullied, all they want is someone to listen to just once. But to get even the school to listen to kids these days is, I had one parent tell me, because I run a martial arts school, it's like, why should I have to fill out paperwork for a school to care? Which is like, oh, damn. Yeah. Why do you have
Yeah.
to fill out paperwork for a school to care about your kid being bullied? That does not make any sense
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all. So, speaking of bully prevention programs, a shameless plug, I started my own nonprofit for bully prevention. It's called Karate Chop Bullying, which was the original name of this podcast until we changed the name to Breaking Bullying. Long story there. But my program is built off of the experiences I learned from this podcast and my own experiences and what I wanted as a kid. And what we focus on is the three pillars. So I have three pillars. I have movement, mindset, mentorship. So I teach all three of those in my program. It's all hands-on learning. So we don't just teach awareness. I actually teach kids, this is how you do it. I physically hands-on. This is how you be confident. This is how you do this. You're gonna have some kids who are gonna do this to you. This is how you do that. This is how you come around that.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just like, I don't just say this stuff. I prove that this is how you do it. So
That's great.
we just got started in it yet. So, but I ran the program for about 3 years now and got excellent feedback. So now
Good.
I've
That's
turned into a
great.
nonprofit. So we're just starting. So if you listen to the end of this podcast, you'll hear more about it.
Okay, great. That sounds great. I'll check it out.
So do you recommend people doing what you did?
So I can't necessarily recommend it. I think that if people want to try it, they should, but I think that it's possible for it to backfire. I happen to have a really good experience with it and got really positive feedback, and it was really gratifying, and I learned a lot. But it could be that, like you said earlier, that somebody could say, "Why are you doing this?" You know,
Do you,
and yeah,
do you pose a risk though? Like you said, some of those kids who bullied you had child like harmful child experiences as well, that they were being harmed at home or whatever. I'm not sure if you said at home, but they were being harmed
yeah.
as well. Could you be responsible for bringing up someone's PTSD from bullying that you didn't know about for contacting people?
I don't know. I kind of think that in the situation that I had with the person,
Yeah.
she had been feeling guilty about this for decades, and I was able to alleviate her guilt. I was able to say to her, now that you're telling me this, I completely understand, what you were experiencing was much worse than what I was experiencing. I forgive you. You should forgive yourself, that kind of thing. Think that even if people aren't aware of the impact that the bullying had on them when they were kids, I don't think they forget about it. It's not like talking about is gonna,
It's true.
bring up memories that they don't already have. And I guess it also would depend on what your manner was when you spoke to them. Like I didn't do it in a confrontational way.
Yeah.
I also I also interviewed them in a much broader kind of way, like just asked them
Okay.
general questions about the school environment. I did say, "Were you ever bullied? Did you ever bully someone else?" But it was part of a bigger interview.
Okay. So it wasn't like an email saying, "Hey, you bullied me. Why'd you do that?" It's not like direct,
Right, right.
you know.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
Although I did
So,
have an experience like that on Facebook with somebody that I asked about
oh,
that.
well, now that you said that, you can't just leave us hanging.
So the other bullying that I experienced when I was in middle school and high school was from these 3 boys who lived across the street from me, and, they had a lot of friends that would congregate at our house, and they would constantly bullying me and my friends and my family. They would For some reason, they would make gorilla noises at us when we
Okay, that's
came
weird.
out of our houses. I think it was because my maiden name was Grill, and
Okay.
so they would say, like, "Gorilla, gorilla," or something, and they would, like, be like, It was really horrible for, like, a young
Okay.
girl to have all these boys doing that to them, and they would also make anti-Semitic remarks, and they were they didn't actually do anything physically, but they were scary, they were threatening. So, one day, years ago, when I was on Facebook, I saw that, one of them was part of, like, a high school Facebook group. And I spoke to one of my friends and I said, "I don't think I could be a member of any group that would have him as a member," or something like that. And my friend said, "Oh, don't you
Yeah.
think," my friend was like, "This was 30 years ago. Like, don't you think he may have changed?" And so I sent the guy a Facebook message and I said, "Hey, why did you bully me and my friends? You did this, you did that. What was going on? It really was very scarring to me." And he wrote back like 10 minutes later and he apologized profusely and he said that he was a jerk and he can't speak for anyone else, but he regrets it and he had to go and apologize to all these people when he graduated from high school and he was going to apologize to me, but he was too embarrassed. And it made a big difference to me. It really
Good.
did.
I experienced, so my last name is Flynn. And I still remember this when I was in kindergarten, we had neighbors too that would yell like, "Hey, Flintstone!" Like I was like, "What?" I mean, today I think it's kind of funny. It's clever. That's how old I am. I mean, there's a cartoon back in the day called the Flintstones,
Yes, I'm aware of
and this
that.
was like a grown man yelling this at me. And it was meant towards my parents because it's like they don't think they had any kids. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I got teased by my neighbor for my last
It's
name.
amazing what people can like how people can make fun of your name. I mean, Flynn doesn't seem to me to be a particularly, a name that would really bring on bullying. It seems like such
I
an
always
innocuous kind of name.
No, yeah, it was Flintstones, but when I got older, it was like, "Oh, you have, like, a TV name. You have, like, a news person's name, Tim Flynn." I'm like, "I guess, I don't know." But I didn't that's not to me, it wasn't being made fun of.
Right.
Just remembered, like, they're getting called Flintstone, it's like, "Okay, I like the Flintstones." It's a cartoon in
Yep.
the '80s, but whatever. What advice do you have for people that is holding on to this trauma? And now I know this is not legal advice, and you said it's up to you, but what advice would you have for somebody who wants to reach out to a bully? What's the right way to do it if they want to
Well,
do it?
yeah, if they want to do it. I mean, I think that there are other ways to deal with bullying trauma that I now know about that I didn't know when I first started this, like different therapies, like trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR and internal family systems. There are a lot of different techniques that are really good for this particular issue that I wasn't aware of. But if somebody does want to interview their bullies, I actually, in the book that I finished, which I'm still trying to get published, I actually put my interview in there as one of the appendixes so people can actually see what it is. And if people reach out to me, I will share it too. It's just sort of general questions about, what your life is like now, what you remember from school in terms of the hierarchy, the kids in the school, whether you experienced bullying yourself, whether you bullied others,
So
what you yeah,
it's kind of like you're just saying, "Hey, Joe, it's been 30 years. I just was thinking about you the other day. What was school like for you?" Just kind of catch you, or like, how's life's been? How has life been the past 30 years? 30 years. It's kind of like you're just trying to just catch up. You thought about them. You thought you'd reach out to them.
right.
So
What
in
do you
reality,
remember?
yeah, you're not calling them out like, "Hey, Joe, you were my bully in school. Why?" You didn't do that. You're just
Yeah, right. In fact, the woman who ended up telling me about her being abused at home, her first response when I asked her if I could interview her was, "I don't think I can be interviewed because I wasn't very nice to you." And I wrote back and I said, "Actually, this isn't about that. I'm interviewing all of the women that we went to school with. I'm just interested in hearing about their experiences growing up." So, I eventually she that took down her anxiety about talking to me, and she called me just out of the blue. My phone rang and it was her. So for people who want to try this experiment, I would recommend that they do it in a really general and not provocative kind of way. Like, just tell someone that you're thinking about your life, you're doing some work on yourself and learning, you know, learning more about your childhood and your relationships and that kind of thing. And you're interviewing people about their experiences. And what do they remember about the social scene at your school? Some people who bullied you might not remember, and that's just how it is. Most people that I spoke to did remember, but not everybody did. And you kind of have to just go with that. And then it's kind of up to you whether you want to share with them what happened to you, how they were involved.
and how did this experience help you out mentally?
It helped me tremendously. I mean, it helped me because most of the people that bullied me apologized, and that meant a lot to me. I felt like it was sincere, and it taught me that you really can never know what's going on in someone else's life. You know that intellectually, but hearing these women tell you in their own words what was going on for them that made them behave the way they did just meant a tremendous amount. And I think that it was healing for me and it was healing for them too in some cases. Not everybody is self reflective, And when they're asked to self reflect, they're sometimes surprised at what they find. And I felt like some of the people that I spoke to were really grateful to be asked to do that. They had like a greater appreciation for their own experiences and in some cases their own traumas that they needed to look at.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that was a positive experience, and if anyone out there plans on doing that, I hope they have a good positive experience as well. I would still like a bully from my school to come on my podcast, so maybe that's something I'll work on, but it's not on the top of my radar right now. I kinda moved
Right.
on from that. But Simone, if people wanna get a hold of you, follow you, where can they do that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm on Substack, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not too active on X or Instagram at this point, but they can also reach out to me through my website, simoneellin.com, and like I said, through my Substack.
Yep, and I will put your website address in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, you saw it go across your screen, so people can find you that way as well. Simone, do you have any final thoughts or last words before we wrap this up?
Just to let people know that I'm also, a psychotherapist in private practice. So if anyone is looking for help with previous bullying experiences, they could reach out to me. I'm also starting some groups for adult survivors of childhood bullying. So if anyone is interested in being a part of that, they could also reach out. And I'm working on a book on bullying that I hope will be published soon.
Awesome. Great. Simone, I want to thank you again for reaching out and coming on my podcast. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Tim.
If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And to learn more about our nonprofit, Karate Chop Bullying, and the anti-bullying and confidence-building programs we offer youth, visit karatechopbullying.org. For podcast episodes and updates, go to breakingbullying.com or email us at any time at breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. I'm Tim Flynn. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time as we keep breaking the silence on bullying.